welcome to another episode of The Green Room, brought to you by Social Garden. Today I'm super excited to be joined by Mark Duffy. Mark, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm super excited to be here, and thank you for hosting me.
Yeah, cool. Well, for those of you who don't know you, I'll do a quick fire kind of intro. So Mark's a digital and media leader with over 20 years of experience kind of working with high-performing teams here in Australia. Most recently, National Head of Digital and Solutions at Starcom. I know you've led large teams across kind of data, technology, media. So, and I know you've got a big curiosity into AI and what's happening around kind of technology in the media space. So excited to kind of get into to conversations around that today. Perhaps maybe, I know you're on a sabbatical at the moment. Perhaps we'll start off, I'd be interested to hear, what are you up to at the moment and what's kind of piquing your curiosity at the moment?
Awesome. Yeah, on a sabbatical, which has been great, by the way. It'll sound really odd, so I wanted to actually just take a bit of a pause from what I was doing. I had a great 6 years working at Starcom, great business, learned so much, and worked with awesome people, awesome leaders, and great clients. But for me, I just I got to that 6 year point, and I was starting to look, what I wanted to do next in terms of the job market. But interesting, what I actually decided then was, before I figure out and look for what's next, maybe I'm actually just going to take a bit of a step back. I haven't never had a break before, so I just thought, I'm just going to use this time really well. Finished up toward the end of August. First few months, done a couple of trips.
Nice.
Been up to Queensland a couple of times. Just doing a bit of relax and having a bit of fun. But one of the key reasons as well around the sabbatical, and I'm going to sound like a bit of a geek when I say this, was just my curiosity. Right, so I'm I'm the type of person that, not that I run after the next shiny ball, but I just had a big sort of curiosity around, how does AI work? How does machine learning work? I do come from a technical background, so I have had prior experience, a bit like yourself in web design and web development. So I worked on different coding languages in the past. And naturally then, when you come from that sort of background, you're kind of you're a bit of a how person.
Yeah.
So, you might laugh, but I've been doing Python courses.
Oh, right, cool.
Yeah, getting back into Python because it is essentially the programming language that underpins a lot of what we have in technology today, in terms of AI, machine learning. And SQL has been learned, so I've just completed a course on SQL.
That's pretty difficult to get your head around.
It's let's talk about that for a sec, right? Let me finish actually. Yeah. So, and then what I've started to do more recently, actually, I've done all these different AI augmentation courses as well. But what I'm doing currently is the Google machine learning course, which, and again, I know I mentioned this in terms of SQL. You were saying it was really hard, and Python can be quite difficult as well. What I've actually found really surprising is when you leverage your AI tool of choice, whatever it is, learning is so much easier. It's honestly you can punch in a whole raft of code into GitHub Copilot or into Gemini or whatever it might be, and it will literally explain to you line by line what's the logic, how the queries are actually working, and it explains it down to you in plain English, which is really understandable. So learning has never been easier. And because I remember I've had, I remember actually starting the machine learning Google course, a number of years ago. Pre AI.
Pre ChatGPT.
Yeah, exactly.
Gemini,
and found it it was great, don't get me wrong. It kind of brings you back to your mathematics and your statistics, linear algebra and, all the sort of things that you would have learned at school. But I found when I was doing it back then, it was somewhat a bit more challenging.
Yeah.
Obviously it still requires a high level of concentration and time and effort. But when I've been doing it recently and leveraging the tools that are around, like the AI tools as your assistant for learning, like it's just, you're able to learn something a lot quicker and understand concepts that, might have taken you, or things that you might not have understood. It's just so much quicker.
It's really interesting because you think about, the people kind of in the market now and these agency businesses, it's like that kind of transition to understanding, whether it's Python or even if it's the kind of tools and the logic that kind of sits underneath, these tools that are no doubt going to kind of power the ecosystem or are already kind of powering the ecosystem. It's kind of interesting when you think about the unique advantage the kind of next gen has coming through, having the ability to basically consume and learn in this kind of new way. And I think it's equally important, for people like us to be, taking the time out of the day to, the day job or like yourself stepping back to kind of learn the fundamentals of what the next gen of marketing and media looks like. Yeah. When you kind of reflect now, looking back, like what are some of the things you feel like you kind of have had to unlearn, having because you're obviously going into this new phase of learning and you come from, a real mix of like digital, traditional media, obviously more so on the digital side. What are some of the things you feel like you've had to kind of unlearn?
Obviously it's great to have come up through, progress your career up through craft and, extending into different media channels and getting into data and technology. It's more like for me anyway, like, and by the way, I'm just talking about the experience of what I'm doing right now in terms of the different courses. It's probably just like the unlearning some of the, sort of traditional learning models that, for me anyway, like, following a bit of a, let's call it a bit of a linear learning process. Whereas like now it just feels like, you can just be a lot more agile in terms of how you approach like any sort of like learning topic. Yeah. So it's probably unlearning some like habits, like and what's kind of got you, through your career in terms of like, okay, well, this is how it's done. This is the process that I've always followed or whatever that might be. So, I just don't think that's the case anymore. Like, and probably, the things that the way you may have approached, like, I'd probably put this into like a bit of a context of, working on a client brief or whatever, it might be like for a particular client, you would follow this sort of like linear sort of like process, going from brief right through to execution. And I think for like, this is me talking personally, obviously, but I think it's probably resonates with quite a few people. You don't need to do all of the steps in that linear process anymore. So it's more like unlearning the processes that you may have applied in the past because, there is like technology there now that we all have access to and how we harness it, that we can, just get out of that sort of like ingrained habit and process and go, well, actually, there's a better way, and there's a...
In terms of like the media landscape generally, I mean, there's a lot of chat at the moment around, the future of media planning and there being a lot of automation coming to the media planning process. I mean, what's your kind of view on that? I know there's a few agencies really focus on trying to bring technology and reduce headcount around the media planning process. I mean, what's your kind of take on that and how that's going to evolve?
Yeah. Look, I think, I think, the end state vision is to like that, because we're sort of getting into agentic now, where you fully automate, let's whatever the system that we end up using. I don't think we're quite the agentic phase in terms of like, just here's a brief and, an agent will be able to just go develop because, you're always going to need that human in the loop approach and oversight. It's probably, I think let's say that's probably the moonshot of where like, most agencies would want to get to. I think there's, potentially a lot of like danger in that as well. Like you're still obviously going to need, really good strategic thinking and oversight.
You need to be analyzing the data in real time. I mean, like I kind of look at that, particularly when you're looking at above the line. And hey, maybe this happens, but I can't see it happening really quickly. I mean, a lot of those planning tools, like in order to actually deliver a TV ad, for example, it's like you're using quite rigid, archaic software in order to kind of actually go through the process of getting a TVA compliant and then actually placing it. So until, the infrastructure catches up and like a lot of those tools are standardized across the industry, obviously here in Australia, I'm not sure how, I don't know too much about the global landscape, but I think digital is different because digital is a lot more dynamic and you have the ability to like inject a lot more automation through APIs and like to your point, you can have oversight and data, like you can have they call it planner or buyer or performance specialist focused on analyzing the data and overlaying their kind of optimizations on the programmatic algorithmic based decisions. But I think when you look at more traditional mass media channels, I think like we still got a bit of sand to go through the hourglass in terms of like the actual infrastructure that media is booked on to unlock the automation. But I'm sure it'll come.
Look, it's a really good point. Like most agencies are using, I think, platforms called Spectra.
Yeah, exactly.
You're right. It is pretty archaic, and I'm sure. There has to be, development and retooling and looking at that sort of like as a whole system. Problem is like it's used everywhere.
And it's like obviously you're in an extremely highly compliant industry like space when you move into that space. I mean, digital is a bit more fast and loose, and you can afford to, make a mistake and correct it really quickly. It's a lot. You get like it's a lot harder to do that when you're on TV schedules and like more traditional schedules. So I don't know. It'll be. I certainly think. I think like obviously digital. I mean, like again, Facebook's had AI and the algorithms for a long time. Same with Google. Same with all like of these platforms we're using. So it's kind of just how team interact and engage with those platforms is what's going to evolve. And I come back to like data and creative being like the kind of core disciplines and where the kind of performance defining components live, in my opinion. It's like kind of where, I think where the capability's got to shift to in terms of the modern marketer.
I think just on that point, like when, talking about like let's call it the modern marketer or modern media professional. Look, I think as well, like, and you can probably start to see this happening as well. Like, and, throughout like my career, like I've always, had curiosity. I've always, collaboration is really important. Collaboration is probably sometimes not more important than craft, but equally. I think, going into the future, collaboration is just going to be so important. Like, yes, everyone will have their core craft background, of course. But, as AI automates more, do you need less people to get the same output?
Correct.
Answer's probably yes. That does give like, professionals, people that work in media, opportunity to collaborate more because, where I found, when we're trying to drive like let's call it a futuristic or a digitally mature media approach, it requires like collaboration. So, you need to be able to, speak with other departments. You need to not understand or get deep into their craft, but you definitely need to be able to, understand their, what their outputs are. Likewise, when working with clients, you need to respect where clients are at in terms of, their point in time and their own journey, their internal structures and processes and ways of working, the data and technology that they're using. So I just see, the modern and future agency being a very, obviously leverage. This is assuming that they're embracing AI, and be able to, remove a lot of that, like repetitive tasks and, being more productive. But it does give us that opportunity then to be able to connect the dots, be more collaborative, and, working with clients to, like some of the points that we talked about before, you've got all this data sitting within your platform. We use these panel data sets that are really good from an insights perspective. How do we connect that into, the market and technology platform that you're using, and how do we connect it through to ad tech and media? So I feel like, it's going to be a lot more of a bird's eye view.
Yeah.
You don't have to be deep domain specialists and everything, but, we just talked about, what I've been doing in terms of my learning phase that I'm going through at the moment. The pace of learning is there.
Yeah, for sure.
So, you can learn these things a lot quicker and understand them a lot quicker. And then what you can really focus on is, right, well, if we want to drive change, maturity, sophistication, being that connector, collaborator, being able to connect the dots and, get different departments, within the client's business on board and, working as a unit, a united front with a goal, with a roadmap. I sort of like, I've found from my own experience, when you use the word transformation, it's almost like, it's too high stakes. I think you might, it sounds like scaring people. So I just prefer to think of it, look, this is optimization. This is, our progression roadmap.
For sure.
Or
I love that.
Or key account plan or whatever. My transformation just makes people go, oh my God, that's too daunting for me. Which, it's true, because transformation means many things, right? So, and focusing on progress, just progressing that work. So,
and
if
being
you
able to track that, right, is the key.
track it, get quick wins on the board, because if you are able to be that collaborator and, being a bit more strategic, what's what's my role or, anyone in the business's role in terms of right, okay, well, if I've got all this automation happening, I'm leveraging, AI for augmenting my work, it allows me to elevate. How do we then, get some quick wins on the board, leveraging you, test and learns, leveraging you. You don't have to do everything. It could be something as simple as, okay, let's look at this propensity modeling project and, looking at our high value customers and, how do we best find more of these? Or even, okay, this is our approach to our old way of targeting audiences. We've got now a hypothesis in terms of using this data-driven, more real-time signal segment. Let's test that, and how does that work, and how are we measuring it? And just that sort of elevation, collaboration, and then being able to, focus on progression as opposed to perfection. And
for sure.
And probably don't
One of the things I'm keen to, I'm conscious of time, and unfortunately we're running out of time, but one of the things having you in here I'm interested to chat about is just measurement, given your background in media. And I think, it's certainly something that I think most agencies and most clients struggle with is like attribution and measurement and, what is kind of the right structure and the right way to kind of measure, the impact, particularly when I'm probably talking more digital, but kind of the impact of digital in your experience. What have you found to be the best way to deliver, whether it's multi-touch attribution or some kind of attribution model, and what are like the fundamentals to kind of get that stuff right?
Yeah, look, this it's a really good point. That we talk about measurement, but like a lot of this obviously changed in the last few years as well. Maybe we should have mentioned that previously, like when we were talking about like signal loss and cookie deprecation.
For sure.
Once that sort of like started to disappear. Unfortunately, a lot of like multi-touch attribution was based around that technology. Correct. And probably also shows that it was probably flawed, to be quite honest.
For sure.
When it comes to measurement, like, it's almost, and I know you can talk about like first click, last click,
correct.
Data driven, all that. There's many sources of measurement, within different platforms. If clients are using, whether it's Adobe Analytics or Google Analytics, but there is like, not exactly one silver bullet for, this sort of like, okay, this is the perfect, perfect measurement. But what, a lot of the progressive brands and agencies, I guess, are doing, going back to causal measurement, media mix modeling.
Yeah, which is like more getting mathematicians to kind of look at the, correlate the data between, a point of sale data essentially with like advertising data and 100%. Develop trends and stuff. Yeah,
100%. And then obviously the business sales data as well, being really important in that. And because I've been doing some learning and development, it's all linear algebra as well. Yeah. So, but I think that's been, that's critical now.
I'm finding that still there's such a challenge there around, I think, like brands at scale where they've kind of got the capacity and the budget to like be able to do like mix like this kind of like, you kind of need to have a level of scale to warrant the investment into like, having hardcore data analysts. I mean, maybe not. Maybe there's a solution in between, but I find it a little bit more difficult for smaller businesses. And typically they're kind of looking through that lens where it's like, it's either first touch, last touch, or like, maybe they've got multi-touch, but usually I find that they're either just all first touch or last touch.
Or like, I mean, if it is sort of like it's a good point, like media mix modeling is not for every business. Yeah. It actually needs a lot of
scale
data, like, the quantity of the data as well. But like a lot of progressive brands and agencies are doing like clean room measurement as well. So, as in being able to onboard, like Google has their own solution to it, Meta have theirs. There's some of the more non-walled garden, like the likes of a LiveRamp as an example. But being able to onboard a subset, obviously not all of your data, but a subset of your data in a safe haven, and being able to, pull in your media and your campaigns
and attribute
and do the attribution that way. And, that is a more sort of like potentially a more realistic solution for
smaller
for smaller
and I think
businesses.
just like having a like obviously a key part of the challenge with attribution is educating, like from the executives all the way kind of down to the sales team, is like that kind of education process around what and we know we live in a world where channels work together to deliver a result. You've got brand, you've got performance, and that it requires a mixed media solution to drive the best outcome. So it's not always black and white to say the sale came from that channel. And I know that it's challenging if you're an executive And particularly, in our industry where it's like property focused, it's like probably historically, if you kind of step back a wee while, it's like you ran a paper ad and that's where most of the inquiries came from. And it was pretty obviously that's where they were generated, or it was the signboard. So kind of making that jump and understanding, kind of the role all channels play and how to kind of attribute, a portion of a sale across channels. I think, it's like super important. It's something, we've always been fixated on cost per sale reporting and just like just attributing a return on investment to the media dollar. But, I think with the technology evolving now, that is going to become, I think that there's going to be a lot more, I think that kind of hardcore, mix modeling is going to become hopefully more accessible for kind of customers with less data and smaller budgets to be able to kind of understand, how things work together to ultimately deliver a sale.
Yeah, 100%. And look, I mean, we're talking about advancements in AI in this space as well. So, one of the expectations from all of that would be, reducing that barrier to entry to be able to, if it's, we're talking about media mix modeling or, clean room measurement and all of that. So, you would expect it to be a lot more accessible to industries of all sizes moving forward.
For sure.
But I totally get it. Like every let's call it walled garden has its own, and they have their own attribution models, but we know that that's more proxy.
Cool. One of the things we love to do here at the Green Room with our guests is quick fire questions. I'm going to hit you with some one-word answer questions to get your response. So, brand you've learnt the most from in your career?
Many, but I got to say Mila.
Cool. Most underrated media channel?
I'm going to say Out of Home.
Cool. Brand or performance?
Oh, God. I come from a performance background, but I have a huge amount of respect for brand marketing. But I'm just going to have to go with my my background in performance.
Cool. Performance to the core.
Yeah.
Creative or data, which comes first?
Oh, wow. Look, I mean, logically, creative first, but it's like the chicken and the egg. I come from a technical background, so I'm going to say data.
Sweet. Metric you trust the most?
Sales. Like as in...
Right it. AI in media, friend or foe?
Friend.
Cool. Gaelic football or Aussie rules?
Oh, that's awful. That's really bad. Love my Gaelic football, but I got to be honest, I really embraced
I love
Aussie rules. Like I love Aussie rules.
Oh,
but,
cool.
Oh my God, I'm going to have to stick to my roots on this one and say Gaelic.
Who's your Aussie rules team?
Geelong.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. You've been on a pretty good run with them.
Exactly.
Mornings or evenings? Your night owl or your early riser?
I'd go mornings. Yeah, love my mornings.
Yeah, cool. Coffee or tea?
You know what? I'm on the decafs at the moment. Coffee. I do love tea because obviously we drink lots of tea in Ireland. But yeah, look, I'll go coffee.
Cool. And then finally, one skill every young media pro needs.
Getting into AI. Like I know that's like a blank canvas, but
I like curiosity. I thought was kind of how you explained it. Awesome. Well, Mark, it's been awesome chatting with you. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I feel like we've covered a lot, around the future of marketing, agency, obviously talking about measurement there. So really appreciate your time. For those wanting to connect with you, is LinkedIn the best place to kind of reach out and connect to you? Yeah, just find me on LinkedIn. Awesome. Mark Duffy. There's not too many of us, I don't think. Well, enjoy the sabbatical. We'll be keeping a close eye on where to next for you. But yeah, really appreciate your time. Awesome, George. And thanks for having me. Thank you.